Okay, well, it's great coming out to speak. I've been wanting to get back to see Jeremy in Waynesville for a while. And tonight I'm speaking about my experience as a conservative activist over the last 35 years. And eventually we're going to get to the part where we talk about resources that are available for you to do the hard work of freedom. But before I begin, I wanted to include the disclaimer. And the disclaimer is, I am representing me. I don't represent any elected official or organization. My remarks have not been authorized by any organization's bureaucrats or other rear echelon so-and-sos. Now, I believe somebody in the back, who obviously was in Vietnam, said something about Mike Foxtrot, but I don't know anything about that. David Barton, who is a great author and great American, spoke recently in Virginia, and he talked about that everybody likes the goodies created by this society, the most productive, the most innovative, the richest society on the planet, as well as in history. And to put that in the right context, 97% of the inventions that have ever been made came from the United States. The problem is the left and crony Republicans don't understand where the goodies came from. So he talks about that. First, the Founding Fathers created a society whose foundation was grounded in the concept that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. And unalienable means man did not give them to you, and man can't take them away, or the government can't take them away. And on that foundation, they created a structure, the Founding Fathers created a structure of the Constitution to protect those rights with a limited government, rule of law, separation of powers, federalism, all grounded in traditional Christian values. If you start chipping away at the foundation, taking God out of public life, or you ignore the structure and have the Supreme Court ruling by judicial decree, then the foundation of the structure will collapse and we'll stop getting the goodies. The goodies aren't going to keep coming without that foundation and structure. I gave a speech to homeschool families a little while back, and I said, the elections happened and you voted, but that's the beginning, not the end, of your obligation to defend the Republic. You have to inform your representatives at every level, from the city council to the president, although it's a little harder to do the president, of how you want them to act on your behalf, how you want representatives to represent you. Because as we will talk about, there's a lot of pressures on them not to represent you. And the individuals like your congressman who stand up to all that pressure, it's very hot in that kitchen, are due great thanks, not only from you as constituents, but from me as an observer, a couple of congressional districts over with not as good a congressman. The biggest obstacle for citizen participation is having timely information so you can act in the process of self-government. So you have to know what's happening, when it's happening, so that you can instruct your representatives how to represent you best. And like I said, a little bit later, we're going to talk about some resources you can use to do that. I'm pretty sure that everybody in this room, how many in this room worked hard in 2010 to elect the Republicans because they said, if they elect you, I'm surprised his phone rings. I always call him, and he never calls me back. Well, actually, he did last night, so listen. Okay, so how many people worked hard to elect a majority Republicans in 2010 because they said, if you elect us, we will repeal Obamacare? Anybody in this room did that? Okay, and what happened? They didn't do anything. That's right. Okay, then they said, 2014, if you elect a Senate majority, we will repeal Obamacare. I'm pretty sure you worked hard on that too. That's right. All y'all are guilty of electing Tom Tillis. And what happened? Nothing. Well, actually, they did send out fundraising letters. You probably got some of those. They called press conferences, and then they fully funded Obamacare and all the rest of the president's addendum. So then they said in 2016, okay, we're really going to do it. You elect a Republican president, and sure enough, Donald Trump beat the Bushes and the Clintons in the same 9 months. Very impressive, by the way. And nothing happened. Well, actually, they did pass something. I believe it leaves 90% of the incentives in place, or the requirements for insurance companies, the mandates, the ones that are driving the cost up. And we have some serious problems, because if those mandates stay in the law, 3 things will happen. First, the Republicans will own it. Second, costs will go through the ceiling. And third, we usually talk about beating Republicans who aren't worth anything in a primary. It won't matter. We're going to lose 50 seats in 2018 because the people will rightly blame us for going back on our word and not doing anything, not doing what we said we were going to do. So, and we know that at least 60 members of the House lied. They said they were going to repeal Obamacare, and they had no intention of ever doing it. They voted that ridiculous show vote in 2015 because they knew the president would have vetoed it. When it was obvious that Trump would sign a bill, then 60 members walked out. It might have been as many as 100. They said they're not going to vote for it. And that's where we are today. Okay, now, I know a lot of you are wondering, that was a great guy. No, I'm not. I'm sure you guys aren't wondering, because Mark Meadows is doing the hard work of freedom. But in a number of other places, like my district, the 5th District, saying, wow, she was a good congressman her first year. What happened other than she was elected to the leadership? Well, a lot of folks are wondering, how do these folks talk well on the campaign trail and at the Rotary Club, and then go to Washington and do the opposite? And so Russ Voigt has a model that I want to share with you. Why do Congress do the things they do? And if you recall, Russ Voigt is the president's nominee for Deputy Director of Office of Management and Budget. And during the confirmation hearings, Bernie Sanders said, it's okay to be Christian. It's just you can't have your conduct informed by your Christian beliefs on the job. Now, I don't have to tell you that not only should we have Christians in government, but the Founding Fathers, specifically John Adams, says, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So not only do we need to have Christians in there, if we continue to go the direction we're going, the whole thing is going to collapse. Because it's not designed for an amoral people that, among other things, has killed 50 million babies. But I digress. Okay. Here's the part about how you understand why the Congress does the things it does. The first thing is that members of Congress give away some of their power as members to the leadership. The leadership basically runs a political cartel. Everybody knows what OPEC is. Some of you, like myself, are old enough to be in some of those lines back in '71. OPEC created a cartel to fix prices so they could dampen out the market instability in the oil. Instead of this, you have this. For the same reason, the politician types have created a cartel in Washington. But they want to dampen political instability. In other words, they want to keep the members from going off on a tangent and doing something that will lose their majority. Congresswoman Fox, my congresswoman, said, you can't score unless you have the ball. If you don't have a majority, you don't have the ball. Hence, anything you do that threatens the majority needs to be stopped, like repealing Obamacare, repealing Planned Parenthood funding, repealing funding for refugees, stopping the waves of immigration invasion. If any of that threatens the majority, and we have to find ways to stop it. So that's what the cartel does. Now, how do they enforce? How does that power manifest itself? Well, when the Republicans are in a majority, there's a conference where all the Republican members belong, and they elect the speaker. And they nominate somebody, and then there's an election. Democrats all vote for Nancy Pelosi. Who is the most hated member of the Congress? Is it Nancy Pelosi or Maxine Waters? I know the guy who's running against Maxine Waters. That's why I asked. You need to write him a check. His name's Omar Navarro. He's a Republican in Torrance. Write him a check. Okay, so any event, they elect a speaker. The speaker controls the appointments to chairman, vice chairman, subcommittee chairman, and members of the committee. So that's a lot of power. His people decide what kind of office you get. Are you going to get the big corner office, or are you going to get a closet? Mark's working on a closet by standing up for the folks in his district. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. They decide whether you get to go on the cushy trips to Paris. Congressional delegations. They decide whether, or through the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee, I don't send them any money, by the way, or their Senate colleagues, I don't send them any money either, or the RNC, but they decide who gets money raised for them. Not only writing checks to the members, but most importantly, talking to lobbyists to tell them which checks to write. So the speaker likes you, he tells all of his lobbyist buddies to write you a check. If he doesn't like you, that's not going to happen. They send speakers in to campaign for you, both at fundraisers and other events in your district. And if they don't like what you're doing, they can use negative sanctions, denying you all of those things. And the worst case is, as was threatened against Meadows and a number of other members, Bud, the young guy down in Louisiana, that they'll recruit somebody, put the entire force of the GOP behind him and defeat you in a primary. So, now, in light of that awesome array of instruments of power, I'm hoping you're appreciating the conduct of your congressman, who is told, hey, you never get around here by rocking the boat. You got to go along and get along. And what does Mark do? This is a motion to vacate the chair. And boom. What's his name? Boehner's gone, and then with a little help from the congressman of the 3rd District of North Carolina, who writes 48 hours before the vote, if you have a skeleton in your closet, you need to withdraw from the speaker's race, and boom, Kevin McCarthy is gone too. So a friend of mine defeated Eric Cantor, and we got Boehner and McCarthy. Boom, 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 all three of them. It was very good. Okay, so hopefully you can understand how impressive Mark Meadows' conduct is, given all of that stuff that's arrayed against him. But even with all that power, the speaker cannot control what happens in the Congress without controlling the procedure. And how is that controlled? By the Rules Committee. Because every piece of legislation that goes on the floor has a rule attached. The rule decides how long you have debate. There's rule. It changes all the House rules. The rule attached to a bill can say, okay, all the House rules are repealed, and the only rules that apply are in this rule. The time for the debate, which amendments will be heard, if any. Now, the leadership, most of the time, says you can vote on an individual bill as your conscience dictates. But they say, we want a party line vote on the rule. Bad things are going to happen to you. You will not be in the cool kids club if you vote against the rule. Now, patriots, I'm a patriot, I believe all of you are patriots, want the congressman to vote their conscience every time there's a vote, including the rule. Specifically, if the rule is going to impede the process of achieving the conservative agenda that you were elected to go do, then you should vote against the rule and take the rule down. Otherwise, you have stuff where they fully fund Obamacare, and you can't even offer an amendment on the floor because the rule does not allow you to do so. But I did say something about the Cool Kids Club, and the reason that I mentioned that is because Rush Voigt says that high school is the best analogy to what happens in the Congress. You know, you start in elementary school on the city council like I did, and then make it to middle school in the state legislature, and then you go to high school, the United States Congress. And everybody wants to be at the cool kids table. You don't get at the cool kids table by rocking the boat. That means that Ted Budd and Mark and that guy down in Louisiana, Jim Jordan, all those guys are not on the cool kids table. And you know, the whip has a dinner. Most of the members feed themselves during the session by going to the whip dinner where they give out instructions and feed the members. And that is a very cool reception if you're doing things like offering a motion to vacate the chair. So, you know, it's a very uncomfortable experience if you're not towing the leadership line. Okay, well, you may wonder, what is the difference between a conservative congressman, state legislator, county commissioner, city councilman, and the folks who have an R behind their name who aren't conservative? Have you ever wondered about that? Okay, Newt Gingrich says the difference is that the moderate/progressive/scared Republicans will pursue conservative policy objectives only if it doesn't require any personal or political risk. Personal risk to themselves, that they won't get money from their excess donors and get beaten, and political risk that they lose the majority. They're sitting in the back bench. It's no fun anymore. So that's a big difference between chairman of the committee and ranking member. So non-conservative members will not push the agenda unless there's no risk involved. Guess what? There are no items in the conservative agenda that have no risk involved. So conservative elected officials will take the level of risk necessary to get the conservative agenda enacted. And that's the difference. And I think that will be useful to you. Okay, so we're back to the leadership. The leadership does not like political risk. So they manage their members and conservative activists. And by manage their members, and they do this to the extent they can get away with it, they want to avoid doing anything on substantive issues that could possibly cost them their members leaving the cartel and voting for something like getting rid of Planned Parenthood. So at all costs, you do not let that bill go to the floor. You have to come up with distractions. And they come up with a lot of good ones. One is to hold hearings. Let's hold hearings. Let's talk about it. What happens at the end of the hearing? Nothing. But we had hearings, they were on C-SPAN. Second is drawing attention to a non-issue to distract you with a shiny object so you don't see what's actually happening. And there were some group of people shot, the usual suspects, gun grabbers plus the Republicans who are cowards. So, let's enact legislation to close the gun show loophole, something that Jeremy knows something about. They want to end private transfers of guns at gun shows. So the leadership comes out and says, this is outrageous. We will not allow gun registration to occur. So they focus your attention on something that was never going to happen. And meanwhile, a bill that can actually pass is gaining momentum. It's called the shiny object. Watch out for shiny objects. Then there's the pass show bills that are going nowhere. And next week they pass the real bill that fully funds the Obama agenda, which, the continuing resolution that was just passed in this Congress with the current Republican president was essentially the Obama agenda. Continue to fund Obamacare. It continued to fund Planned Parenthood. It continued to fund refugee resettlement, and it didn't fund any of the president's initiatives on immigration. Right after the November election in 2014, I had dinner with a young lady in, I think, Baton Rouge, and she was excited. The Republicans have a majority in the Senate, and we can finally do something about this refugee resettlement. And I thought to myself, should I really tell her that the vote on Thursday is a total useless vote? And if they really wanted to do something, they take it out of the continuing resolution, but they're not, because that would, the president would veto it, the government would be shut down, and the leadership believes that there's nothing worthy of being fought for if the president said he'll shut the government down. And I said, I think I owe it to her to tell her that the show vote on Thursday, tomorrow, is nothing. The real vote is Tuesday, where they will fund all that stuff. It's just like the election never happened. And I told her, and it looked like I'd hit her with a 2x4. But that's one of the tactics. Pass the show bill, fund the real bill. And that brings us to run out the clock. We really can't enact the conservative agenda this time on the debt ceiling. But next year, when the CR comes up, continuing resolution, we'll fight then. Then the CR comes up and says, well, I tried hard, but we couldn't get anything, so let's knock it back to the next CR. That one's in September. Was the election 6 weeks away? Guess what? That's not going to happen there. Oh, we can always do it after the election. Never happens. Okay, so how in blazes, with all of these incentives and all the tools of the leadership, do you get your senators to act right? Because like I said, your congressman is always acting right. He's leading the conservative caucus and doing a great job. Well, we have to break the cartel. How are you going to break the cartel? First thing is you have to get informed. The second thing is you have to communicate with your member and their staffs. And over time, the staffs are changing a little bit, but you can have a relationship with a staff member. And a number of folks, I've given this speech a couple times, and they said, really? Will the congressman or senator talk to me? I said, I ran $500,000 of ads against Virginia Fox, and on TV morphed her face into Hillary Clinton. If she will call me back, your member will call you back. In fact, I needed a passport on an expedited basis, and she got it for me. And I said to her chief of staff, well, Todd, I'm impressed that she wants me back in the country. Like I said, she's going to call me back, get me a passport, expedited basis, so I can get back in the country. Your member will talk to you, or the staff will talk to you. And then you have an obligation to talk to your social precinct, family, friends, as you get this good data. Family, friends, church members, co-workers, people you trade with. So then there's more and more folks out there. And, you know, politicians, a lot of them can't read, but all of them can count. So as you do this, the number goes up. Now, for some reason, conservatives will not write letters. We want them to write letters to the editor, and we want them to write op-ed pieces if they feel comfortable with that. If you're a writer, let's get out there and write 750 words on a topic. Allegedly, conservative think tanks might help you out. I say allegedly because I haven't been able to get that help yet, but I'm a pretty good op-ed writer, so I just faked it. Social media. Now, how many people have a Facebook account? Now, there are a number of conservatives who say, this is a conspiracy, et cetera. Yes, it's a conspiracy, and they're hoping you don't do it so they can continue to kick your butt all over the elections. So you need to use Facebook to communicate in social media. How many people are using Twitter? Okay, well, I'm a former college professor. We have homework. Let's start using Twitter to make points about conservative policy, to retweet good points. I don't know if you were following the French election, but Marine Le Pen's best line of the debate is, there's going to be a woman president of France. It's either going to be me or Angela Merkel, German president of France. Them Germans have been working on that a long time. They finally made it. So It can be very powerful. I mean, we had all these Americans watching the French election, and we got a German election coming up. Unfortunately, Angela's going to get reelected. Okay, so, but we only have to get one member of Congress out of 230-something to oppose the leader, 240-something, I think it's 246, to oppose the leadership's position. Because once that happened, I mean, you can talk about this stuff all you want, but if there's a member who stands up and says, Mr. Speaker, I rise to beat the heck out of subsidizing the bankruptcy of Puerto Rico. And folks say, what? Are we subsidizing Puerto Rico? Yes, we are. It's an indirect subsidy, but it's coming out of your pocket nevertheless. So once one member does that, then it shakes up the nation, thanks to C-SPAN and social media, etc. And then all you have to do is get to 22. 22 Republicans can defeat anything that the Democrats won't vote for. So that's, that makes Mark Meadows more powerful than a lot of committee chairmen, because the committee chairman just does what the speaker tells him to do. Mark can say, we're not going to pass this health care bill. And boom, it falls apart, which is good for that health care bill, because the president and the Congress would have owned the first Obamacare non-repeal bill. So I don't know what we're going to get. But okay, so how are we going to get there? Okay, one of the things is you should ask why, or try to find out why any elected official wants to be elected. And we're going to talk about members of Congress, even though you have a good one. Well, let's talk about the senators. Why do you want to be elected? Now, Renee Elmers said, God rest her political soul, Renee Elmers said, I am a Tea Party conservative gal. And
yes, she was.
And she got to Congress, and like, if you lit a cigarette when you got off the plane, before that cigarette was out, she was trying to join the G. I'm glad I'm in Congress caucus. And she totally turned her back, and it was amazing, because the leadership didn't do anything to support her. She got, well, her opponent did a couple of things to support her, like trying to grab the college kid in the middle of the election. Remember that on TV? Mm-hmm. Etheridge grabs a college kid, and it's all over everything. So he was working hard on her behalf, but nobody in the Republican leadership was working hard, and she won. And then she turned her back on the people who brought her to the dance. So is your member or candidate wanting to join the G, I'm glad I'm in Congress caucus? That is automatic disqualification. Now this one's a little tricky. Does your member want to bring bacon back to the district? Okay, I want everybody to understand. If the reason they're going up there is to bring the better airport to fill-in-the-blank county, they are not going to be able to do anything about the conservative agenda, because the leadership will say, hey, if you want that $35 million for that airport, you cannot be messing around with these rules, and you cannot be pushing Obamacare repeal. So they are toast. So you want members saying, I am going to Congress to enact the conservative agenda, and I will do that at risk to my reelection. Basically, we want these guys to go up there and say, we want you to come back with your shield or on it. If you think about, I am not a Marxist, so I do not believe the modern cultural Marxism Democratic Party's agenda. But you have to admire the Democrats for two reasons. The first reason is they are willing to fight. If there was one Democrat in the Congress out of 435, he'd have a bill on the floor tomorrow to repeal the minimum wage and dare you not to have a vote. Our members, at least 100 of them, are just hiding under their desk, hoping it'll all go away. The second thing is, everybody told them, if you pass this bill by one vote and you radically change the people's health care, that there's 50 or 60 Democrats going to go down. And what did the Democrats do? They said, we don't care. We're willing to sacrifice. Well, actually, they said Republicans are gutless and they will never repeal a piece of social legislation. If they ever have done it, they never will do it. So we're going to get the policy agenda, and we're willing to sacrifice 60 seats in Congress to do it. Boom. They lost 50 seats. The Republicans have a majority. Has anybody noticed? Are we ever going to repeal Obamacare? I don't know. Maybe not. But we want guys to go up there and say, I am going to enact the conservative agenda. And if I don't make it, I'm willing to give up my seat in that behalf. Because I don't know how we get back to a limited constitutional government unless we elect guys and gals who want to do that. You know, they need to be more like Democrats in that regard. Okay. The second thing are the ratings. Now, I have my handy-dandy Heritage Action beautiful thing from last year I left in the car. There's a number of groups who do ratings. American Conservative Union does ratings. I don't like their ratings. They rated Mitch McConnell as a 92% conservative. Mitch McConnell can't even spell conservative. That is an outrage to give members. They said Renee Elmers was a 90% conservative. Come on. That is, you know, are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? If you're a Democrat, you don't get a point. If you're a Republican, you get a point. That's how good that rating is. And just so you know, they rate Meadows 96 was pretty good. They rate Burr an unwarranted 62 and Tillis a 69. I much prefer the conservative reviews ratings that, again, rate Mark Meadows 95 and rate Burr 40 and Tillis 37. We're getting into some serious Democrat territory at 37. In fact, there are 3 or 4 members of the Black Caucus. The chairman of the Black Caucus has a higher rating than I think Tillis does. That's pretty bad, folks. That's ridiculous. Okay, Heritage Action has a rating system which I like too. They gave Meadows 90%, they gave Tillis 47%, they gave Burr 40%. So, you know, you can at least tell that your 2 senators are like G's or F's or H's. You know, I got to grade papers when I was studying Russian as a second-year student, and she only let us do it for a week because we wrote stuff on the paper saying, this paper is so bad, you don't deserve an F. That's an insult to the people who earned an F. We're going to give you H's and I's. So there are a number of members. She didn't let us do it anymore. I mean, I don't know what the problem was. Slapping around the first-year students. So, in honor of us not having representation in the Senate, I wore my Tim Scott t-shirt. It was interesting that I wanted to get the polo shirt, but they only had larges, and you know, I'd be arrested in South Carolina if I wore a large. So I started working hard trying to get my 2X Tim Scott very cool polo shirt, and they didn't have any more. And so I was asking around, and maybe there was like a box of them stuck under a desk, you know, headquarters someplace. And I ran into this lady who must be a big contributor to these guys, because I get this email back, and I read the text. It says, hey, Vernon, I heard you're trying to get that t-shirt. There aren't, polo shirt. There are no polo shirts. There's only t-shirts, and this is Tim Scott's chief of staff, and it'll be right on it. I looked up at the sender, and it says, Congressman Troy Gowdy. I sent a message back, Congressman, in what universe does the chairman of the Oversight Committee have time to worry about my t-shirt? But I got my t-shirt. And I was just thinking about how bad, you know, that's why we have some Southern Heritage stuff in. I have my North Carolina division of the Sons of Confederate Veterans pin on today, as well as the Trump Pence pin. Nice little enamel pin I got up in Virginia. How bad it is looking at the Southern senators, because it's hard to find any conservatives. First of all, there are none in Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee. Lindsey Graham is totally useless, so that leaves Tim Scott in South Carolina, Kennedy in Louisiana, Cruz in Texas, Cotton in Arkansas, and boy, it's pretty slim. It's pretty slim pickings. I think the guy who Senator Strange from Alabama replaced Sessions. It's not as good. We traded down on that one. But I prefer Sessions be Attorney General than be in the Senate. So anyway, you should look up those ratings so you know, And here's a good tip. When you guys are tweeting and Facebooking, put the senator's rating behind his name. So it says, Richard Burr, R37, and make an explanation. And occasionally let your folks know that that's his rating in conservative review. And I'm sure that will irritate Tom Tillis greatly.
We've got Tom Tillis in our networks. He's on several of our social media.
Okay. Well,
Mine and Eddie's, I know.
well, there was, my apologies to the ladies, but I was in Missouri. I ran the committee to draft Ben Carson for president. So I was on the campaign trail over in Missouri, and they have this thing in Springfield called Lincoln Days. It's 3 days. And I explained to them that in North Carolina, when you go past Raleigh, there are no Lincoln Days. They're all Reagan Days. And somebody said, well, I wonder why that is. And I said, well, this is a fellow named Sherman. And he came part of that part of the state and burned it down. So they're not, Lincoln was their boss, and they're not very happy about him. So they're all Reagan Day dinners, by the way, in eastern North Carolina. Okay, so I wanted to let you know about free publications. Oh, where's my, I can't believe I'm walking off the stage because I left my visual aids over here. Okay. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Free lunch. Capital Connections, which is the paper that Civitas Institute puts out, has great stuff on public policy having to do with the state of North Carolina. Please pass that around. And secondly, we have the Carolina Journal with its new and improved graphics that does a great job as well. So I'm going to pass that on. Both of these are free. You just go on the website, sign up. They'll be delivered to your house. There are a number of conferences and talks. Well, the talks happen. NC Values also has a good online briefing for individuals who are concerned about issues of defending the faith, keeping boys out of the girls' bathrooms, and the other parts of the Democratic agenda, killing babies. NC Values does a good job. One of the things that you really need to sign up for is to get the CJ, Carolina Journal daily policy briefing. So you get an email in the morning at 6:30 in the morning, and it outlines North Carolina policy concerns. By the way, I'm sending around a sign-up sheet, and I'll tell you why I want you to get on the sign-up sheet in a little while. Conferences. Now, sometimes Republicans can't run off the mountain and go to a conference in Raleigh. But if you can send one person so they can let you know what happened. I got to spend 10 minutes talking to Nigel Farage about what was happening in the conservative elections in Europe over some cigars out on the veranda of the Marriott Hotel. And that was at the Civitas Conservative Leadership Conference a couple of days ago. And I got to talk to him. I reminded him about his speech in Mississippi, where he started the speech off in that brogue of his saying, I bet you guessed I'm not from around here. And everybody cracks up. But most importantly, what did he say? The polls are wrong. Donald Trump's going to win. The same thing happened at Brexit. Let's make America great again. And the crowd went wild. And Trump was supposed to be the main speaker at that event. And just before it started, that young guy who's on the staff in the White House said, Nigel, Mr. Trump wants you to give the speech. And so, boom, he gives the speech. And it was a great speech. So we want you to do the conference. Now, Heritage Action for America has the Sentinel Conference that's coming up in Orlando. And I'm going to talk about Heritage Action for a little while. And if you become a Sentinel and you have time and the money, you should go down there. Which brings us to the Sentinel program. I talked about timely information. Every Monday, if you sign up for the Sentinel program, at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, every Monday you will get a phone call. And it is the Heritage Action staff. And they give you a 30-minute briefing. The first 20 minutes are laying out what the hot issues before the Congress are this week, what the leadership strategy is, which is usually no good, what the Patriot strategy to counter it is, and then they open up for 10 minutes of questions, and they want you to go call your member of the House or members in the Senate, depending on what the issue is, and let them know how you feel. Now, Heritage Action doesn't get it wrong very often, but it's entirely possible, since they're human, they might get it wrong. You can take your contacts, and you can make the phone call and tell them how you want them to represent you, because Heritage Action is not the rear echelon blankety blanks. It is you. 18,000 Heritage Action Sentinels are the organization. The staff are just coaches. And in a similar 18,000. In a similar fashion, you are the Republican Party. The Republican Party exists above this county as an intellectual construct. You are the party. The party leadership at every level are supposed to be coaches to help you do your objective, which is to elect conservatives who are willing to risk their own political career to enact the conservative agenda. If they are not doing that, then you need to get a new leadership. End of story. We cannot continue to apologize for Republicans who aren't doing their job. You just can't. The stakes are too high. Now, Republicans have jobs. At least a lot of them do. So you might be working at 5:30 on Monday, and they understand that, so that you're not, a union employee, et cetera, et cetera. So they will send you the transcript Tuesday morning, and they will put the entire transcript so you can listen to it again if you missed it on the website, the Sentinel Hub. So I encourage everybody to go to heritageaction.com/Sentinel and sign up. It'll make the rear echelon folks very happy. Okay. Does anybody not have a crony hunter patch? I made up 1,000 of these. This is a crony hunter patch. Notice the rhino in the gun sight reticle. Now, the reason that we don't call it a rhino hunter patch is because less than 1% of the public knows what a rhino is. Most folks think it's what their grandchildren want to go see at the zoo. Everybody knows what a crony is, and they don't like them, except for the other cronies. So if you haven't gotten your crony hunter patch, now, warning, if you wear this like to political meetings, the county commission chambers, etc., it makes those politician types very uncomfortable. I have mine on a fighter pilot jacket on this side, 15th Air Force on that side. It's very cool, but it's too hot to wear. Okay, so crony hunter patch. So what I have you signing up for is that there are a couple of folks around the state who want to create a program like NC Guardian, North Carolina Guardians, who do the same thing the Heritage program does, except at the state level. So when the legislature is in session, you're getting timely information on what's before the legislature, so you can use your relationship with your state legislator and state senator to either get it enacted or stop it. If there was a North Carolina Guardian program in place when 6 Republicans voted against the concealed carry bill, there would have been a lot less than 6 that voted for it, because their life would have been very rough. I mean, that McGrady guy is a communist, and he just ran as a Republican. He's going to get elected as a Democrat. And he's not running again, so we'll be done with him shortly. But the other 5 would have had serious pressure placed on them. And I know people like John Faircloth, who usually vote right. He's a police chief, and all police chiefs don't want citizens armed. Almost all police chiefs don't, particularly in big towns like High Point, because they're politicians and they're not law enforcement. When you're a police chief in a city that large, you're a politician, you aren't law enforcement. All the rank and file guys, they were asked in a survey, what's the first cause of crime? Criminals. The second, what do you think they said was the second cause of crime? Liberal judges who won't keep them locked up when we arrest them. And the 37th was guns. So, it was like way down on the bottom of the list. So the rank and file police officers know what's going on. The police chiefs, particularly in the big cities, not so much. So that's why I have that going around. So in summary, we can't keep the goodies. We can't enjoy the bountiful harvest that the good Lord has given us if we take out the foundation that credits God with giving us unalienable rights and protects those unalienable rights with a structure. There's a lot of pressure to get rid of that stuff. We have outlined all the pressures that are placed. But because members of Congress and other elected officials can count, you still can counterbalance all of that pressure by engaging in the activities that we talked about. Because politicians can't all read, but they all can count. And we don't want a state legislator or member of Congress to ever say what a young lady who's not in the legislature anymore said. I said, "What are you going to do about this bill?" And she said, "I don't know. My boss, the speaker, hasn't told us what to do yet." And I said, "Excuse me? I thought your boss were the 80,000 folks in this county who elected you." So we don't want anybody ever to say that, and the way you do that. We have a big task ahead. I should have shared you this at the front end, but I'm very proud of my family's military heritage. In 2015, I got to stand between batteries 3 and 4 at Chalmette, the Battle of New Orleans, at roughly the place within 10 yards of where my great-great-great-great-grandfather was standing, in one of the 2 battalions of free men of color, defeating the most powerful and most experienced army on the planet at the Battle of New Orleans. And then it went up through 2 great-grandfathers who were Louisiana Native Guard. I got to tell the story. There was a militia outfit that went all the way back to the Spanish, made of free blacks in New Orleans. And so when war was declared and Louisiana seceded, it was like 1,000 black folks with black officers called up the governor and said, "Governor, you know all those regiments you have to raise? Well, we got one for you." The governor says, "Outstanding. That's one less I have to recruit." So he sends a note to the Confederate Congress and says, "Oh, we got 1,000 black folks who want to tramp around the Confederacy, beat the Union." Congress said, 1,000 black folks with muskets. That's a bad idea. So they were mustered out in 90 days. The 1st Battalion joined the Union when Farragut came to town. I haven't checked to find out whether I can join both the Sons of Confederate Veterans and the Sons of the Army of the Republic. But in any event, and it goes through that to all of my uncles, all my father and all the uncles, my in-laws, everybody was in World War II. My mother was doing armament stuff. One aunt was in uniform. Another aunt was a secretary at Tuskegee, the airfield down there. And my uncle, one uncle was killed in Korea. I was proud to wear the uniform. Everybody here who was in uniform knows that your oath to support, defend, and uphold the Constitution of the United States does not expire when you retire or leave the service. So we have a big obligation, and even the folks who hadn't served yet, you have an obligation. And what is that obligation? Our sacred obligation is to leave an America to your grandchildren, at least as free as the one in which we were born. I thank you for doing the hard work of freedom, and that concludes this briefing.